So your role as clerk of the Privy Council Office, the Privy Council Office being the nonpartisan, you were the most senior public servant in the Government of Canada in a non-political office. Would you agree with my definition of clerk of the Privy Council?
Yep, that's certainly one of them.
So could you describe to me then what your role or what the role of the Privy Council Office would be in any national security scenario? Because it sounds to me like the Privy Council Office has, from what you've told me, has absolutely no role in either advising or executing instructions when it comes to national security from the Prime Minister's office. Is that true?
No, that's not the way to read it. I can commend to you my book from 2021, Governing Canada, which sets this out in some detail.
Like and subscribe.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wernick, for appearing. In the response that you submitted to the committee, you indicated that you don't ever recall seeing a memo in or around June of 2017 entitled Memorandum to the Prime Minister respecting broadly issues around Beijing's interference in our democracy. Can you speak to why you don't recall that? Was it because you were receiving a lot of memos and a lot of briefings around interference by Beijing at that time?
No, thank you for the question. I left government 4 years ago today. I did not take any records or secret documents with me. I don't have access to document logs. I don't have access to my old calendars, and I don't have access to any records. So I'm relying on media stories and Google searches. And as I indicated in responding to the clerk, I have no memory of seeing that note, which is referred to in a media clipping. If I read it, and I probably did, it was 6 years ago.
Thank you. In or around that time, did you have information that Beijing officials were actively pursuing a strategy to infiltrate or interfere in our democratic processes?
Not that I recall.
And so you have no information that agents of the Beijing regime were assisting candidates running for political offices in Canada? You don't recall having any discussions around interference by Beijing whatsoever?
No, at the time, the main preoccupation was Russia. It was a month after the French presidential election, and we were very concerned about disruption of elections, but most of the attention was on Russia at the time.
Did the Prime Minister ever instruct you that there were certain topics that are not to be discussed with him?
Never.
And that would also apply to officials in the PMO. No one in the PMO ever told you about that? That there are certain topics not to discuss?
I didn't take direction from the political staff of the Prime Minister.
But did anyone ever instruct you to do that, even if you didn't take direction?
No,
okay.
Never.
Thank you. Are you aware of anyone in the PMO or the public service ever intentionally withholding any national security information from the Prime Minister?
No.
Okay. With respect to the daily intelligence brief prepared by the Intelligence Assessment Secretariat of the PCO, aside from the Prime Minister, who receives that daily intelligence brief?
I don't know the answer to that. You probably should ask Mr. Jean when he appears. There was a distribution list to people within the council office and some other departments of people that had the appropriate security clearance.
Now, in your response, you make reference to the document logging system at PCO and indicated that the committee could ask for extracts as a means to get more information or to track down this particular memo of June of 2017. Do you have any comments with respect to the parameters in which to undertake a search of that logging system? I mean, how would you go about that?
I think you'd have to ask the Privy Council Office that. I'm just aware that notes went from the Privy Council Office to the Prime Minister's office. They were logged out from us and in from them.
And through you, Madam Chair, we had a fairly straightforward request of the PCO regarding dates in which the Prime Minister was briefed. Do you have any, it took a month for it to be produced. Do you have any comment about how long, what kind of a turnaround time we could expect from a request of a search of that system?
I can't really speak to how they work now. I left 4 years ago. You'd really have to ask the current Privy Council office.
Decides what information is assembled into the Prime Minister's daily reading package?
There are a variety of pipelines of paper and notes to the Prime Minister, and it's the Prime Minister's office that organizes that and decides what to send on and when.
And what does the process of producing the daily reading package look like?
I think you'd have to ask Mr. Jean that.
On that, you don't know. You had alluded to in your response to the committee about a political briefing note. Does the PMO typically include a political briefing note on top national security briefings?
Ask Ms. Telford that. I don't know.
You don't know. Oh. When you were the clerk of the Privy Council, when the Prime Minister was briefed on matters of national security, would it be customary for the names of those present at the briefing to be recorded?
Again, you should ask Mr. Jean. When I was clerk, and I don't know how it works now, I ensured that there was direct, unfettered access from the National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's team. So if anybody kept, minutes or logs or attendance or whatever, it would have been the National Security Advisor.
Through you to our witness, thank you, Mr. Wernick, for proving that once you retire from this business, you never fully retire. But glad to have an opportunity to ask you a question. You were the clerk of the Privy Council in January of 2019, is that correct? Yes. In your email that you submitted to the committee, you said that production of documents might be more illuminating to ask for the extracts from the document logging system and so on. In this paragraph, you say the clerk's office has always kept a log of all documents sent to the PM by PCO, which fall into two types, notes for decisions and notes for information that don't seek a decision. PCO constantly chases to get a return from the Prime Minister's office. Most notes are acknowledged or returned by PMO, but certainly not 100% of them. I have in my hand a document issued by the Privy Council office dated 17th of January 2019, the time frame for which you were the clerk of the Privy Council office, that says espionage and foreign interference activities. China is still the most active and sophisticated perpetrator of espionage and foreign interference activities in Canada. Espionage is the state-sponsored collection of sensitive political, economic, or security information by clandestine means, and foreign interference activities refer to actions by state actors, proxies, or co-optees that are covert, deceptive, or coercive and go beyond normal or acceptable diplomatic activity and are meant to mislead or actively undermine the host state. This is a document that is by and large redacted, but I've read just the parts that I've, as a parliamentarian, am able to see. And in your earlier answers to questions by Mr. Cooper, you led this committee to believe that you in no way remember having any discussions about Chinese foreign interference at all, yet I have a document right here from your office, for which you were the clerk at the time, that says China is still the most active and sophisticated perpetrator of espionage and foreign interference activities in Canada, which the document then went and defined. Can you circle that square for me, Mr. Wernick? Because it doesn't seem to... How would you not know about Chinese foreign interference, given that you were the clerk of the Privy Council office at the time?
I may have read it. It was 4 years ago. I have no recollection now in April of 2023 of having seen that note. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I just don't remember.
Okay, so in several responses to my colleague, you said that we should be asking the National Security Advisor specific questions, but your role as clerk of the Privy Council office would be to carry out any or to execute any instructions or prosecute any instructions that were given to you by the Prime Minister in cabinet decisions. Is that not true?
It would depend. A lot of them could be communicated directly to whoever was briefing the Prime Minister at the time. I
Does the
ensured
National
in,
Security Advisor execute any decisions? Or
as I said, when I was there, I don't know how it works now, there was a direct conduit from the National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I would interpret that, and so correct me if I'm wrong, as a source of information, but the National Security Advisor would not necessarily execute decisions of the government. So is the National Security Advisor in charge of a department, in charge of several other employees who actually prosecute decisions made by the government, or is it simply the culmination of information gathering to provide information and intelligence to the Prime Minister?
No, the National Security Advisor is also essentially the chair and the dean of the heads of the various agencies and has the ability to contact the head of CSIS, the head of CSE, the head of RCMP, and so on. So it would depend what you mean by instructions. It may well, be I want to know more about this, or I agree with that. I did not get in the way of the traffic on the way up or on the way back. So your role as clerk of the Privy Council Office, the Privy Council Office being the nonpartisan, you were the most senior public servant in the government of Canada in a non-political office. Would you agree with my definition of clerk of the Privy Council? Yep, that's certainly one of them.
So could you describe to me then what your role or what the role of the Privy Council Office would be in any national security scenario? Because it sounds to me like the Privy Council Office has, from what you've told me, has absolutely no role in either advising or executing instructions when it comes to national security from the Prime Minister's office. Is that true?
No, that's not the way to read it. I can commend to you my book from 2021, Governing Canada, which sets this out in some detail. The Privy Council Office is the Prime Minister's department. The Prime Minister has 7 distinct hats and roles in government. Chair of Cabinet is one, First Minister in the Federation is another, international leader for the purposes of dealing with other countries is another, and so on. And Privy Council Office is a set of secretariats and teams that support those 7 roles. One of them is the Security and Intelligence Branch.
Oh.
Thank you.